The third time, yeah.
So what I want you to do is I want you to reach into your mental fanny pack and give these new and up-and-comers a bit of philosophy to take with them.
Okay. My philosophy on wrestling, right?
Yes. All right, wait a minute. No, it can be on life. Anything you want.
Okay. My fanny pack, what is it called again? The fanny pack what?
Philosophy.
The fanny pack philosophy. I like that. The fanny pack philosophy is this. If you sign up to be a wrestler, if you choose that this is what you want to do, never lose sight of the fact that you're choosing to entertain someone. You're choosing to make someone happy. On the independent circuit, tickets are typically, fairly inexpensive, and a lot of times those people don't have a dime. Take for an example, somebody gave them some money and said, hey, you need to, they're down on their luck or whatever, and they say, hey, get out of the house, go see a wrestling show. And you get there, and it's your job to entertain them. Never forget that it's your job to entertain people. And why? Because they want to be entertained, or they wouldn't be there, right? You wouldn't have fans. They want to be entertained. Be respectful to the fans. Even if you're a bad guy, still carry that level of respect and carry yourself professionally. Also, train. Get in the ring with whoever you can, whenever you can. Talk about wrestling. Develop your skill set. Develop your style. But above all else, train and continue to educate yourself. To this day, I continue to educate myself about wrestling. And that's the one thing. It's a never-ending process as far as I'm concerned. Now, a lot of people, will differ with that, but I feel that you should always try some form. You may outgrow or be beyond like a basic level seminar. So there are more in-depth seminars that are out there, more in-depth people that you can talk to. So always continue to improve yourself and never lose sight of what you're there for.
The first place that I ever saw you, do you remember where that's at?
I have no idea. I've been hitting the head a lot.
I saw you at HVW.
Huh?
And it was in the building there in Hendersonville when they had the upstairs where everybody would go and dress and that sort of thing. The first memory that I have of you is being gashed open and being sewn up right there in the building.
That happened. That actually happened. It was a giant 6-man hardcore match. Took a very, very, very bad chair shot. The ropes were barbed wire. There was glass everywhere. It was just rough, and I got draped over the barbed wire by James Drake, I believe. Once again, the guy from my first match there, serial killer Chris Roper, inadvertently, it was a total accident, but I always make him feel bad about it, but it was a total accident. Hit me in the head and gashed me completely open, and it's one of those days where I reverted back to that. Remember we were talking earlier about cracking the ribs and saying, oh, Lord, this is the only time in my wrestling career where I reached up, touched my head, and my finger went under my scalp, and I was like, you know what? I believe I'm done wrestling tonight. And so laid down in the back, and got stitched up in the back on a nasty-ass table in the back, and used Purell as a disinfectant, and I had a stitch kit that I'd acquired. And, seriously just got stitched up laying back there on the back table.
One thing that I remember about that also is while you were being stitched up, Blake Arledge was there, and he put a robe on, but he pulls up the hood, and he says, welcome to the dark side.
This is the Overlord of the Wasteland, the engineer of combat, the big boss with the hot sauce, Ricky Regal.
This is Samantha Starr, the perfect knockout.
What's up, everyone? This is the meatball himself, Tommy Capone. You're listening to the CIW Report right here on Spreaker.com.
PWX Wrestling. Live the experience.
It's time for your PWX Word of the Week. Excitement. There's your code word. Now go to PWXPro.com, click on Ticket at the top of the page, and enter excitement as your code word. There will be 2 winners a week. Head on over to PWXPro.com for your chance to be a part of Rise of a Champion 10.
Getting your child home safely.
Tap your heels together 3 times.
Is just a click away.
There's no place like home.
But making sure your child is in the right seat is just one of the steps down the road to safer travels.
I don't know how it works.
Find the right seat for your little one's age and size. There's no better way to get home safely. Know for sure that your child is in the right seat.
How can I ever thank you enough?
Get all the facts at safercar.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Now to more of our interview from this week's featured guest, on the CIW Report. You were with HVW for some time, and again, this was the happening place to be when I first met you. What made HVW what it was?
I tell you what made HVW was, it was one of their themes to every show was you never know what's going to happen. And you didn't know who was going to show up, who was going to be there, who your opponent was going to be. A lot of times it was just sheer madness. It was a lot like the good ECW shows because every show that they ran, especially in that building, was just off the chain. You never knew. You had guys coming up from Charlotte. You had guys coming down from Virginia. You had people coming from all over the Mid-Atlantic area just to be in that little building and put on these amazing shows. The crowd could only sit at two sides of the ring, and the announcer sat at the edge of the one side, and you just never knew what was going to happen. It was a nice setup. It was a unique setup. And even in the next building they were in was a very unique setup. It was so cool. And it was a professionalism that they had. It was the first place that really had permanent structure that I'd wrestled in instead of an armory or a VFW or something, It was very professional, very well presented, professional DJs, good lighting. Everything was just like lightning in a bottle for a time there.
Looking more into that history, there was things that happened there. You had the conspiracy, you had the EOD, and then another stable that comes to mind is Violence.
Violence Party of Four, yes. That was a little faction that we ran there.
Which do you feel, put your biasness aside, which do you feel was the better faction?
Oh, for the short time that it happened, the Violence Party 4 was a really unique, hard-hitting group. So it didn't last for a real long time, but while it was there, it was vicious because it was James Drake, Randy Wayne, and Big Daddy Z, and myself. And so there's a lot of chopping, a whole lot of chopping going on. But it was rough, and it was good wrestling too. But it was a fun time. I put them over in, of course over.
Okay, and finally, the last part of the puzzle, probably the shot heard around the world, was Viper versus Osgard.
Correct.
Give me your thoughts on that incident and how it happened.
Okay, here's my thoughts on that. I have no opinion on it. I gotta let that sleeping dog lie. I have no opinion. That's between the people that were involved in it and for them and buried the past. So, I just don't have an opinion on it.
When I joined HVW, the one thing that I noticed above anything else was Law was not there. Why did you leave?
I always traveled. I was the kind of guy that I also held every belt in HVW as well. And so when that time comes, I felt like I was getting stagnant, getting stale, and I wanted to go back to Southern Wrestling Association. And I wanted to, travel a little bit and get out and hit these different promotions on an ongoing, consistent basis. And that's what I do, and that's what I've always done. And you can ask David Reimer, that's what I've always done. I'll show up and wrestle for a couple of years for SWA, come up and wrestle for a couple of years for Viper and Gary and Mandy at HVW, and I might end up in New Frontier Wrestling, and I did a lot of wrestling in Lenore, but did a lot of random traveling, just to random shows. But that was a deal with leaving and coming back, and it depends on which time you're asking about leaving, because I would come back and wrestle for them, for 2 or 3 years, and then I'd leave again and then come back. One of the times was a little choppy, but it all got worked out. It was just toward the end there of HVW and everything. It was just a lot of stress and things going on that I feel that is not an issue to me anymore about any of this, because it was a known fact that when I would come back and if Gary would ask me, hey man, come wrestle for me for a little bit, yeah, I'll come wrestle for you, or hey man, you've been a tag team for me, y'all run a tag team for me, yeah, absolutely, we'll run a tag team for you. But then I would end up back home, as I always say, back at Southern Wrestling Association. They were always for the best for me. Anything that ever happened was always for the best. And plus, it was that whole thing. I didn't want to become stagnant. I don't want to be that guy that was a wrestler and never traveled 10 miles from home. So I didn't want to be that guy, because I was fortunate enough that HVW was in my hometown. So I could get off work and be there in 5 minutes. But I didn't want to get stagnant. I don't want to be a hometown hero that just, never traveled anywhere, never did anything other than just wrestle to, that home spot. So it all was for the good.
Okay, so you talk about being a Triple Crown winner at SWA.
Yes.
You have also held every title at HVW, and I'm sure that there's more titles than I can keep up with. But for you, what is the one title that you've held that you treasure more than any other?
Oh, wow. Wow. Southern Wrestling Association's heavyweight title. Because when I held it, I ranged from anywhere from 190 to 220 pounds, depending on my mood, and how I was at the time. And I'm not the biggest guy out there wrestling. So I was fortunate enough to have David Reimer trust in me, despite getting a lot of criticism from guys that were, veterans, saying, hey, he's not ready to carry that title. He can't carry that title or anything else. And I damn well did, and I did it well. And I've had great feud in Southern Wrestling Association while I held that title. I remember getting that title I earned that title through a match with Mario Bell, Tattoo, and the special referee was Ricky Steamboat. And so that will always hold a special place for me. I'm looking at the picture of me and Mario and Ricky Steamboat right now holding the titles. That will always hold, the most important belt that I ever had.
Carolina Independent Wrestling Report will be right back, right after this.
This is Bryce Anthony, one half of the Sons of Steel. Make sure you check out Boomer Payne and myself in the Sons of Steel saga every Friday on Spreaker.com.
Hey everybody, this is the king of the selfie, your girlfriend's favorite wrestler, Cameron Cage.
This is Abel Adams.
This is Chris Heimer. Get a string with me and listen to the CIW Report.
CIW Report.
The CIW Report.
Previously on the Ninja Troll Digicast.
Two very different versions of the future collide this December in the 5-issue miniseries Star Trek Planet of the Apes.
Oh, no way.
Yes.
Yes. Just had a nerdgasm.
It's all about love. The Ninja Troll Digicast.
With discussions on comic books, sci-fi, and all things in geek culture. This is the Ninja Troll Digicast. Join us each week right here on Spreaker.com. Now to more of our interview from this week's featured guest on the CIW Report. You had Ricky Steamboat to ref your match.
That's correct.
Did you get any kind of advice from him while you had the opportunity?
Absolutely. It was like a sponge around Ricky Steamboat. But the best thing that I learned from him was in the ring. Two big things happened while we were in the ring. Right off the bat, at the beginning of the match, he violently slung into the steel stairs. Right? They didn't have a Spanish announce table, but it was slung into the steel chair or steel stairs, and I caught the back of my head on the chair. I knew that I was busted open on the back of my head, so I reached back, and of course, look at my hand. There's a lot of blood. And I roll back in the ring, and I'm telling Mario, "Hey, give me a minute." And I roll back in the ring, and I'm like, Ricky. And I cut open bad, and Ricky grabs my head and looks back, and he looks at me, and he gets down, and he goes, "You've got a little bit of blood running all down the back of your neck." That was my experience there, and it was like, oh, everything's going to be okay. But just to take it like that, I had a little bit of blood running all down the back of my neck. That was the first thing that I learned to keep it. He was sincere about it. I don't know how to describe it. He was like, get over it, so tough it out, kind of thing. It was the vibe I got. So it wasn't that big of a deal. The other thing was, at the end of that match, was the most classic rib ever pulled for Southern Wrestling Association, I believe. I was not supposed to win that match, and that was all the determinant of that. That I wasn't supposed to. That was not supposed to be me. Mario was going to keep carrying on the belt. What ended up happening is, at the end of the match, we go through the finish, and I've got Mario pinned, and it's 1-2, and Mario pulls a Macho Man and does a roll up where he rolls me on top of him and has his shoulders on the mat, and they count 1, 2, 3. Ricky Steamboat counts 1, 2, 3, and I stand up. And first thing I'm thinking is, Ricky Steamboat f***ed up my match. Holy shit, you can bleep that out later. But those are the true thoughts that were going through my head. And I was like, Ricky, what are you doing? And he comes over with the belt, and he comes over to raise my hand. I'm like, no, what's going on? And he goes, hey, brother, they're ribbing you. And he hands me the belt and raises my arm. And I was like, holy cow, I got ribbed by Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. So, yeah, memorable.
Now we're going to go to the current personal side of Superlaw.
Yep.
The one thing that I know about you is you are a secluded man.
Okay.
and you are a very tranquil man. When I say you're secluded,